Hi, welcome to English Stories, my channel. Subscribe, share, like my video. Thank you. Goodbye.
The third installment of My Frist Love is out today. Then stay close to this too. How can I make their acquaintance? Was my first thought when I waked in the morning. I went out in the garden before morning tea, but I did not go too near the fence, and saw no one. After drinking tea, I walked several times up and down the street before the house, and looked into the windows from a distance. I fancied her face at a curtain, and I hurried away in alarm. I must make her acquaintance, though, I thought, pacing distractedly about the sandy plain that stretches before Neskutchny Park. But how? That is the question. I recalled the minutest details of our meeting yesterday. I had, for some reason or other, a particularly vivid recollection of how she had laughed at me. But while I racked my brains and made various plans, fate had already provided for me. In my absence, my mother had received from her new neighbor a letter on gray paper, sealed with brown wax, such as is only used in notices from the post office or on the corks of bottles of cheap wine. In this letter, which was written in illiterate language and in a slovenly hand, the princess begged my mother to use her powerful influence in her behalf. My mother, in the words of the princess, was very intimate with persons of high position, upon whom her fortunes and her children's fortunes depended, as she had some very important business in hand. I address myself to you, she wrote, as one gentlewoman to another gentlewoman, and for that reason am glad to avail myself of the opportunity. Concluding, she begged my mother's permission to call upon her. I found my mother in an unpleasant state of indecision. My father was not at home, and she had no one of whom to ask advice. Not to answer a gentlewoman, and the princess into the bargain, was impossible. But my mother was in a difficulty as to how to answer her. To write a note in French struck her as unsuitable, and Russian spelling was not a strong point with my mother herself, and she was aware of it, and did not care to expose herself. She was overjoyed when I made my appearance, and at once told me to go round to the princess's, and to explain to her by word of mouth that my mother would always be glad to do Her Excellency any service within her powers, and begged her to come to see her at 1 o'clock. This unexpectedly rapid fulfillment of my secret desires both delighted and appalled me. I made no sign, however, of the perturbation which came over me, and as a preliminary step went to my own room to put on a new necktie and tailcoat. At home I still wore short jackets and lay-down collars, much as I abominated them. In the narrow and untidy passage of the lodge, which I entered with an involuntary tremor in all my limbs, I was met by an old gray-headed servant with a dark copper-colored face, surly little pig's eyes, and such deep furrows on his forehead and temples as I had never beheld in my life. He was carrying a plate containing the spine of the herring that had been gnawed at. And shutting the door that led into the room with his foot, he jerked out, "What do you want? Is the princess Sasiakin at home?" I inquired. "Vonavidi." A jarring female voice screamed from within. The man without a word turned his back on me, exhibiting as he did so the extremely threadbare hind part of his livery with a solitary reddish heraldic button on it. He put the plate down on the floor and went away. Did you go to the police station? The same female voice called again. The man muttered something in reply. Has someone come? I heard again. The young gentleman from next door. Ask him in, then. Will you step into the drawing room? Said the servant, making his appearance once more, and picking up the plate from the floor. I mastered my emotions, and went into the drawing room. Due to the length of the story, the third part is related to today. Stop today then. Stay tuned for the fourth part. Goodbye.